Sorry, I'm so excited. You answer.
So just so I know who you are, I want to start out by hearing your name, but we can all say it at the same time. So it'll be after the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Wow, I love your names. I love your names. All right, so are you ready to jump in?
Yes.
Great. I'd like to take you to the eco-village that I visited in Italy. It's in the foothills of the Alps. It's nestled in a beautiful valley, and it was started around the 70s by Falco Tarasco, an Italian that means hawk dandelion. Everybody who joins the eco-village gets a cool name with an animal and a plant at the end of it. They founded the eco-village on the premise that they'll time travel back to the state of Atlantis, they'll get the codes for peace, sustainability, and unity among people, and then they'll bring them back and they'll seed our current reality with those codes. To be honest, I had no idea about this before I signed up. I went there and I paid a lot of money and I had to live with these people for 2 weeks. And I lived with them for 2 weeks and I kind of couldn't enjoy myself because I couldn't tell were they serious or not? Were they serious? First of all, did they actually time travel? That's the first question. The second, do they believe that they actually time traveled? I didn't know that, but what I did know is that I went there because they are the premier example of collective living on the planet. Since the 70s, they've grown steadily in number and tenure of folks up to 600 people. In a valley, they live collectively in homes that are designed especially to keep the peace, but they only have one kitchen and they're called nucleos. And 15 people and their children live in these homes. They produce 50% of their power right on site, including the wood harvested from their region and the solar on their buildings, as well as gardening. They produce 50% of their own food. And the other 50% they get from regional cooperatives. On top of it, the unspeakable thing to Americans, they share cars. So why was I here? Why was I here with the time travelers, racking my brain about if they were serious or not? I was here because I graduated MIT and I went out. I went out to do the urban planning work that I was meant to do, but I was vexed by something, and I was vexed by something that the head of the department said on the very first day of class. They said, "I've got bad news for y'all," and we're kind of cowering a little bit. What's the bad news? Is it about the department? Is it something about what's going on in the world? He says, America's urban planning is in a state of complete crap right now. And not really knowing that, I was, okay, tell me what you're talking about. He says, since the 50s, we've been developing with pure orientation towards the car. Everything you do, you need a car for. 90% of people in the United States depend on a car to get their basic needs met. And because of that, we've been building houses further apart. And because of that, we've been isolating ourselves more, and we've been creating more political division since the 1960s. And because of that, our houses are getting bigger. They've gone up by a factor of 1.5. They've gone up 100%. They've doubled in size since the 1950s, and we're filling them with more and more crap. And I'm there getting the entire download of what's wrong with urban planning in America, thinking to myself, what can we do about this? So I just asked that, very innocently, great, we're gonna learn how to solve this at MIT's urban planning school. He says, well, we could get people to ride buses more. And I thought, oh. And we could put solar panels on the buildings. I thought, oh. And then he said, well, we can make electric vehicles a big thing. I said, oh. And then I raised my hand again. I said, it doesn't really sound like we're changing the problem or solving the root cause. It sounds like we're just putting a Band-Aid on the issue. And he looked at me and he said, next question. And so because the mentality was such that technology will solve our cultural problems, I went out and tried to use technology to solve our cultural problems. And I went and I did work in India, and I went and I did work in China, all across East Asia, North America, South America. And by the time you see me now, and about 5 years earlier, I still had that burning question. Why are we not investing dollars, investing time into shifting the culture and the issues that underlie the symptoms of climate change, the symptoms of the other issues that we care about? And in a context, a nation that looks like this, I had to go searching for answers. I had to go searching for answers, and that's why I wound up in a place like Damanhur. And I wound up in places like Damanhur all around the world. I went to eco-villages in South America, in the rainforests surrounding Sao Paulo. I woke up with monkeys and toucans in my life for a long time. I was living in co-housing in Santa Fe, living in co-housing out in the Bay Area. I was working with folks that had eco-villages in LA and in San Francisco. I was gathering the codes. Much like the time travelers were going back to Atlantis to bring the codes into our world, I was gathering the codes of how can we shift our culture from individualist to collectivist, from unsustainable to something that is in more harmony with the earth. And because I have this background in government, because I have this background in urban planning, I figured I got a pretty good shot at getting this message out to the world and also trying it out myself. So I did some calculations. What if we all shared stuff? Now that's pretty broad, but there are a lot of existing examples of this in the world called tool libraries, where there's a common set, like a weed whacker and a leaf blower and I don't know, something else, a hair dryer, and you can go and you can rent it, and then you can bring it back. Tool libraries, so sharing stuff. There's also free stores. If you've ever heard of free stores, it's a place that's located in a neighborhood where the communities come together. What if we drove less? What if we ate whole foods, AKA we didn't eat processed foods? What if we grew our own food? So if we shared 50% of our stuff, which means taking the economic energy out of the consumer goods industry by 50%, if we drove less, AKA we shared 30% of our rides, if we ate whole food, taking 33% of our processed foods out of our diet, and we grew food only 10% of our own food locally, we could cut carbon emissions in the United States by 38%. And I'm shocked. I'm shocked that I was at MIT and culture change, behavior change was just not on the table. It's not a solution. And you may be thinking, why not? Or of course I know why not. Doing these things doesn't really make anybody any money. So that's an uphill challenge that a lot of folks that care about shifting our culture are working with. I did all of this work in my free time. And most of the innovators that we're going to talk about today did the work in their free time. This is a matter of heart. This is not a matter of business. So I call this body of work Revillaging. It is a skill set to re-village, to take every street in America and turn it into a functioning, sharing system. You could call it a sharing economy. You could call it just being neighborly. I began to teach this a couple of years ago. I distilled the principles into some easy-to-learn ideas that folks could take home and just start practicing. Practicing with themselves in the mirror, because we actually are talking about shifting our mindset. Practicing with their loved ones, their families, because we're talking about changing our language around how we communicate ourselves, our emotions and our feelings. Because that is the precursor to the sharing economy. Because if we have conflict, we don't have systems that work. Then corporates got interested, which I found very curious. There's an interest in the business world to enable folks to get over what they're experiencing right now, which is called climate anxiety. Folks all around the world, 50% of Americans actually experience climate anxiety. So there's a lot of different angles that Revillaging is making its way into. The first trend that I want to talk about that I picked up while I was at all of these eco-villages and intentional communities is called needs switching. Needs switching is this trait that humans, as we gain technological advancement, we gain a way to ignore what our body is telling us. So my favorite example of needs switching is, I'm tired, I just need a rest. What do we do when we need a rest when we're at the office building? We get a coffee. And so what happens is we take a need and we satisfy that need with the wrong solution. So the need for coffee might be some version of nourishment, or I want to have a transcendental experience because it's a very potent drug, caffeine. And when we have an unmet need, it begins to spiral. And that unmetness is never met, and then we consume more. So we're talking about the basis of consumerism. A deeper need that a lot of us have is compassion and connection. So when we're at the office or when we're sitting in traffic and we need connection, what do we normally do?
Facebook.
We go on social media and we scroll. And what we're seeking, what we're needing at that moment is serotonin, the bonding hormone, the connection, right? We're supposed to have 12 hugs a day. How many people get 12 hugs a day at their day jobs? Very few. I don't see any hands going up. But instead, we're using the chemical dopamine to satisfy that. And the increasing unmetness unfurls. And the thesis here is that all of our overconsumption is a product of need switching, of having deeply unmet needs. So I went to London. I'm thinking, I gotta go somewhere where they're addressing this problem of basic human needs and bringing it back to a local area. And this example is a nonprofit called Everyone Every Day. They started in 2017, and Everyone Every Day had a vision. They're gonna bring neighbors together and they're gonna ask them, what would make your life better? That's a simple question, but it actually gets to the root of the issue of needs. What would make your life better? So some people said, well, I'm lonely when I cook, or I have to cook a lot because I have a big family and I'd like some help. Somebody said, I would really start my carpentry business, but I don't have a wood shop. I would really love a wood shop. And they got all these ideas and they rented 2 storefronts. They started with 2 storefronts. And over the period of 5 years, people started coming together. They did start to make meals. They did start to create workshops, wood shops, and over 300 initiatives and businesses were birthed from this. 2 storefronts turned to 4, turned to 5, and after 5 years, 6,000 residents in this sleepy suburb of London showed up for each other. They logged 34,000 hours of time together. That's like 4 years of your life. And they were doing that over the course of 5 years. And what they did is they reclaimed the ability to need each other again. They reclaimed the ability to depend on each other. And these strangers that would otherwise have never met, that are actually neighbors, became more cohesive. And when they took mental health surveys afterwards, they showed that there was a remarkable increase in trust in their fellow people, in a feeling of security in their neighborhood. The next trend I want to talk about is conflict. Raise your hand if you were always told to share things when you were a kid. Share, just share. Raise your hand if you were ever taught the skills to share things. No. Oh, one over here. Great, okay. 1 out of 30. When I was told to share, it was just an admonishment to change my behavior. It wasn't a skill. And the basis of an economy where we can start to depend on each other again, when we can get sort of removed from the global industrialized consumer complex that feeds our every need, the barrier is conflict. And in every eco-village I ever traveled to, that was the first thing they said. If you don't understand how to resolve conflict, you're just not going to make it here. And so conflict is something that can be taught in terms of how do we move through it. Conflict resolution through the modality called nonviolent communication is something that is a cornerstone of the Revillaging effort. So I went to the place on the planet where they've experienced more conflict and they've overcome it than any other eco-village in recorded history. This is Earth Haven. Earth Haven was founded in the late 90s on 320 acres of bare land. Talk about needs. They had nothing, and they built their own roads, they built their own electric service, they built their own water service. They built different neighborhoods within the eco-village. And at the time of 2019, they were experimenting so much that they had kind of experimented with the law too. They weren't in exactly the right bounds of the legal standing for how to share this land. And so after over 2 decades of creating a world-class example of sharing economy, they were at each other's throats. They were suing each other. The people who were the star example for the globe of how to live together had no idea how to resolve conflict. So they brought in this modality, this technique called nonviolent communication. They said, this is in the DNA of our eco-village now. And that's the lesson that I learned when I moved there. I moved there in 2022 for a relatively short stay, 4 months. And I had a 250 square foot hut. And I was in Hut Hamlet. And there's even a tinier little spot in Hut Hamlet that's just yurts. And that's called Yurtgoslavia. I don't know why you're laughing. It's true. It's not a joke. Yurtgoslavia is a real place. And they have Loving Acres, which is a 3-story shared apartment building made completely out of the poplar trees that were on the land. This place has a magical thing to it. But the most magical thing that I experienced was what researchers in Europe show happens when people move to eco-villages. Their carbon footprint drops by 70 to 80%. For all the reasons that I showed you before, they're sharing systems. I was there. I didn't really drive much because I had my social needs, my movement needs, and my entertainment needs all within walking distance. My food came from less than a half a mile away. They brought it over by hand to the market that we had there. Every time that I needed an object, like a plate or a fork, a chair, a work shirt, I just went to the free store. It's a 2-story log cabin that was actually the original structure that was on this whole property. It was a log hunting cabin, and you can just mill about and find anything that you need. So my consumer goods were taken care of, my water came from springs on the land, my food was grown a half a mile away, and any of the transportation that we used was possibly shared, or we just didn't use it at all. And the power requirements of a 250 square foot hut are just significantly lower than that of your average American household. And I enjoyed this because it was the first real warning that I got about conflict and understanding what navigating conflict was. So this modality, nonviolent communication, works something like this. I'm making a sandwich at home. And there's some dirty dishes in the sink, but I'm just in the middle of my thing and I'm grooving, and my girlfriend walks in. And my girlfriend's like, she sees the dishes in the sink, and my girlfriend says, I feel so disrespected right now. I'm totally pissed that this is going on. And I'm standing here and I'm thinking, she thinks I'm disrespecting her? I'll show her disrespect, and the whole thing escalates. I mean, how many people can relate that when somebody expresses their emotions or feelings to you, you can kind of take it personally and then turn it back on the other person. Nonviolent communication is a modality where we change our language to express our emotions and our feelings and our needs in a beautiful and peaceful and nonviolent way. So if we replay that again, I'm here, roast beef, whatever kind of sandwich I'm making. And then she walks in and she says, and she takes a minute and she pauses and she does an evaluation. What am I feeling right now? I'm mad, I'm upset, and I'm frustrated. And then she looks at what her needs are. Well, I need order because this sink is full of crap. And I need cleanliness because I just came from work and it was a dump over there. And I need this guy to stop screwing up my space. So she says to me, I'm so frustrated right now. Same vitriol as before. I'm so frustrated right now. I'm so mad. My need for order and cleanliness is not being met. And I look at over here and I said, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Like you're feeling so mad and frustrated and your need for order is not being met right now. How can I help? The languaging is different because she didn't use the word disrespected, because many words in the English language are judgments masquerading as feelings. Nobody feels disrespected. They feel mad, frustrated, upset. We have a lot to learn as human species before we can even think about sharing a car, before we can even think about starting a free store on the corner of our block. And it is this type of skill that is part of the cultural shift that I hope we're all rooting for. The next component is the machine mind. We are tribally minded people and we are an emotional species. But the way that we increase our technological sophistication changes the way that we think about solving problems. And that's what happened when I was at MIT. It was, well, we have these cultural issues around individualism, these cultural issues around overconsumption. Let's fix it with technology. The machine mind is sort of the ability to look at a problem and disregard all of the root issues and try to bring only the symptoms some relief. But as tribal species, we have the ability to connect with each other and to create security in ways that certain types of consumption and accumulation never can. And I want to give us an example of this. I want to do an exercise with y'all, and I'm going to need your voices for about 10 seconds. First, I want you to go within and just evaluate. How connected do you feel to each other right now? Give it on a scale of 1 to 10. Do you feel like less connected or more connected? Okay, and now I'm going to ask for your voice. Over here, I'm going to ask for your voice to say just a simple tone, and I want you to keep it going. Ah, just keep that going. Ah, a little bit louder. Ah, and then I want to hear ah, and just keep it going, keep it going, keep it going. A little bit louder, a little bit louder. And over here, I want ah. But just keep it going again, a little bit louder, and a little bit louder, and a little bit louder. And go back within and just give a number to your sense of connectedness. I'm feeling a little more connected to y'all right now. That's because it's really easy to trick out this hormone called serotonin. It's the bonding hormone. It's the hormone that makes us feel that we're a part of something. It's the hormone of belonging. And what we don't have in our technical studies for changing the circular economy is the 4 technologies of belonging. These are the ancient tribal techniques that we have used to come together for all of time. It is singing, it is storytelling, it is silence, and it is movement. And as part of all of the Revillaging initiatives that I have done, we incorporate this at the very beginning. We tap the heart of the human to feel something that they probably have never felt at a public meeting before, that they probably have never felt in the workplace or at school. And really sadly, sometimes they don't get to feel this at home with their loved ones. I had my parents do an exercise with me where we all gazed in each other's eyes. And so I'm eye gazing with my dad, and then I'm eye gazing with my mom, and they eye gaze together. And I asked, how was that? And they said, you know, I feel kind of funny and light right now. And I said, when was the last time that you guys eye gazed? And they said, we've never eye gazed. They've been married for 35 years, and they'd never looked in each other's eyes for more than 1 minute. I had them look at each other's eyes for 3 minutes. So the process of revillaging follows 3 simple steps. First, celebrate. When I bring people into a room, we celebrate first. We get that serotonin flowing. The next is to co-create a tiny little thing. Hey, I need you to go out on a walk with me. Hey, would you come over and have a potluck? Because in the step of co-creation, there is inevitably going to be a moment of potential conflict, a potential bringing up of a trauma and an emotional exchange. And we get to navigate that and try in a safe space where our livelihoods and our survival do not depend on it. And finally, then, when we are prepared, we can circulate. We have the opportunity to circulate, as in build that free store, build a shared bike shed, build a community garden and farm it together. So I had to try this myself in the beginning of 2024. I printed a bunch of flyers and I walked to 150 households around my house. And it was Sunday at 8:30 a.m. and I was really tone deaf about this. And there was a lot of people at home in their pajamas and they pretty much all answered the door. I handed it to them. They had no idea who I was or what I was asking, except, would you come to my party? They said, what are we gonna do there? And I said, we're gonna have fun. We're gonna have fun. And they said, oh, okay, you know. And I wanted for us to raise our spirits together. I wanted for us to give support and connection to each other. I wanted to co-create a sustainable neighborhood together. And those are what I wanted. And so I put it on the flyer. But I said it really plainly, come party with your neighbors. And so the day of, this was at 6 p.m. on the first Monday of January of 2024. It was going to happen the first Monday of every month for all of 2024. I just thought, nobody's going to come. Nobody's going to come to this thing, you know. Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this, Travis? And by the time 6:15 rolled around, we had 30 people in the room. Of 150 people, 30 people came. Why did they come? You know, I don't have a statistical report on why they came, but I think it's because there is a need, an unmet need that has not been met, at least in the last couple months for them, maybe in their lifetime, and maybe for generations dating back to the early civilizations when we were taken out of our villages. And so the idea that we could come together and support each other, just the idea that we could make the planet a little bit more sustainable, just the idea that we could do something different than what we've been handed as mainstream society was exciting for them. So what was the first thing that we did together? What's that?
Sing.
We sang, we celebrated. That was the first step. So we celebrated. This was us doing names, and we were doing celebrations, and then we co-created. We sat down and I said, what would make your life better? That's exactly what they said at everyone every day in London. And so I asked the same question, what would make your life better? And really similar responses came. I don't like cooking alone. I'm a widow. I'm always short a tool. I'd love to be able to borrow a tool. And so we made lists, and then we got to work. And somebody said, well, I'll bring all the food, and we'll come and do it in your kitchen. I said, okay, that sounds good. It wasn't as well attended that time. And it wasn't as well attended because people were just sort of showing up to this nebulous thing, we're going to cook together. But what happened, that was February. In March, I said, hey, I need you to bring potatoes. And I need you to bring broccoli. And if we want it to be meat, you need to bring chicken. And so by providing the space for folks to have a role, for them to be essential to the creation of this, we got our momentum back up. And for 12 months, we hosted Revillage West Asheville, the party that started to change the world. These are some friends from the neighborhood. These are all some friends from the neighborhood. At some point, our elder named Karen, she's our elder, she's 87 years old. She said, she's German, she said, I don't like soup. I don't want soup anymore. And I said, okay, Karen, what do you want? She goes, I want dessert. So we said, okay, Karen, and this is her fruit salad. This is Karen's fruit salad. We all brought one fruit and did it. And in reflecting on it, in my darkest days, it's like, what did we even do? You know, we got some people together. Did we really save the planet? I don't know. But then I wanted to calculate it. I wanted to say, what did we do, actually? What did we accomplish? And so I looked at the counter example. What if everybody had gotten in their car and gone out to dinner that night? So we took 30 people over 12 months and we got them to walk. And we got them to use less energy because restaurant carbon emissions are more intensive than cooking at home. Well, 30 of us over the year saved 150 gallons of gas, which doesn't seem like that much. The scarier stat is 1,500 pounds of coal, but I don't even know what that looks like. But then I thought, okay, this isn't about exactly just what I can do, but it's about the ripple effect. What if 10% of America did this? If 10% of America got together once a month and ate together, it would save 150 million gallons of gas. It would be the equivalent of taking 330,000 cars off of the road. And I continue to rack my brain. Why at MIT are we not seeing culture shift as a viable option for saving the planet? Because it addresses both needs. It addresses the technological challenge that we have of reducing our eco footprint, but it also addresses the root cause, which is the fact that we're disconnected. So I created within my coursework a rubric to help folks think about what action they can take next. And it's pretty simple. If you're a low coordination person and you're just starting out, you're on the left. If you're high coordination, then you're on the right. If you just want to focus on pleasure, like singing or eating or making music, you can go on the top. If you're really functional and you just care about getting stuff done, you can go towards the bottom. So if you're more on the upper left quadrant, I invite you, knock on your neighbor's door, ask them to potluck with you. Don't cook for them. Cook something as a dish, but ask them to bring one as well, because the more that people feel needed and purposeful and essential, they will come. If you're more high coordination, high function, if you have good collaboration and conflict resolution skills, start the free store in your neighborhood. Get a pop-up tent. Take over a parking space and put some shelves in it. These are the things that actually have global impacts if folks start doing them on the scale of the neighborhood, the city, the region, and the nation. And one of my students, when I was teaching in corporate, she said, "Travis, I just don't know what to do." I said, "Well, what do you love to do? What's your passion?" She goes, "I guess what I love to do is walk." I said, "Great. Go get somebody else to walk with you. Maybe they'll actually not go to the gym and drive and use their car, and they'll walk with you instead." She goes, "Okay." So she goes to her neighbor's door and she knocks on the door. She says, "Oh, hey, how you doing, Kim? Good, good." Kim says, "I want to walk." And the neighbor's like, "That's nice." "Good for you." And she goes, "Oh, no, sorry, I want to walk with you." And she goes, "Oh, okay." Kind of thinking, why do you want to walk with me? And she says, "Sorry, I have a hard time getting out of the house. It really motivates me when somebody else is there with me. I need somebody to help me walk. It's part of my well-being." And then the neighbor was like, "Oh, yeah, sure. Actually, I can walk with you. That'd be great." 1 month into it, she learns that her neighbor is on the message group with all of the mothers on the street. So now, one person asking turns to 15 people walking every week over 12 months in the year. She says, like I said, "Well, what did we really do aside from get to know each other and get a little more wellness in our lives?" And he said, "Kim, I think you might have done a lot." Now, her numbers were around the same as mine. It's like 150 gallons, 300 gallons that she saved in her group. But how many people in America go to the gym every week? 62 or 64 million people. So if 64 million people, they take 2 gym trips a week and they're driving about 5 miles in each direction. If 64 million of them didn't go to the gym one time and just walked with their neighbors, what would the impact of that be? The impact of that would be to reduce the consumption of gasoline in this country by 1.3 billion gallons. The impact of that would be taking 2.8 million cars off of the road. And I guess the point here is that we have an opportunity. We have an opportunity to not just use our free time for sustainability, but to make our free time more rich, to make it more enjoyable, to make it deeper with the folks around us, and build skills for the future generations. And ideally, by the next generation, they know the modalities of nonviolent communication. They know the ways to navigate the sharing economy systems. We can fix the footprint, we can heal the divide, and we can do it by meeting our needs simply, but we have to do it together. And to do it together, we have the opportunity to celebrate, co-create, and circulate. And so what I'll ask you is, next time that you have the need for rest and you think about reaching for that cup of coffee, just take a break. Just take one breath and ask, what do I really need right now? Because the next step that you take may cause a ripple that changes the world.